Welcome, everybody. My goodness me. I was asked if I wanted to do a session this year. I said maybe something with Louis. I thought it was going to be about 100 of us in a small room, and we ended up here. Thank you very much for coming. Louis, did you watch that clip?
I did, yeah.
What's it like watching yourself?
I thought it was quite funny, actually.
Quite funny?
Yeah.
You're
I thought
quite
it was
good.
quite funny. It was a lot of weird weekend stuff, which is, it feels like a different me in some ways. But a sort of more guileless, sort of lighter, maybe more incompetent Louis. I think as I've gone on, I've lost some of my incompetence, and that's a bit of a problem. I'd like to get some of it back.
But also very willing. Like,
Yeah.
you got straight in there. You didn't kind of shy away from the nudity, the headbanging,
No.
the vocals.
I'd like to think I'd still do that. I sort of think, like, who is that Wally? Like, just literally waving his willy around with
I don't know if I saw
abandon.
that bit.
Yeah.
But I must. I want to say that if you want to ask questions throughout the session, I've got this incredibly modern device in front of me, and you can do it through the app. So we'll start at the beginning. Were you much of a TV watcher before you got on TV?
I mean, I think like everyone probably in the world, more or less. I watched a lot of TV, maybe too much. I grew up in South London, and I still remember having a black and white TV, and it was sort of I was born in 1970, mid-70s we got a colour TV, and that was, hugely exciting. You just sort of watch everything that was on, just marvelling at the colours. And I used to if I'd listed the shows that I liked, that would basically, we'd be done. I'd be going for the next hour.
Let's go for it.
I watched
I'm up
everything.
for it.
If nothing else was on, I literally, you're too young to remember this, they'd have test cards when nothing was on of a girl playing noughts and crosses with a rag doll. Does anyone remember that?
Vaguely familiar, yeah.
And so you switch the TV on, and you would sit and watch the test card. Or if it was Open University, if you got up too early and you switched the TV on, the only thing on would be Open University, and it'd be some crazy professor with flares talking about complex mathematics, and you just sit down and go like, that's a bit boring. Right, it's the only thing on. So the things I actually liked were Blue Peter when I was very little, later on prank shows, Beatles About, things like that, things that aren't very fashionable now. I mean, I could just keep going and going.
We've got some clips of some of your influences.
We're going to look at those.
We're going to have a look at those.
That deserves a round of applause.
That deserves a round of applause. So that was John Noakes. So, I mean, and that stands the test of time on gripping television.
That's one of the best pieces of television ever made, in my view.
I mean, it's
extraordinary.
why would he do that?
And, I don't know. I was reading up on John Noakes just this morning, because I knew he was showing the clip. So he was in his... When I saw it, I was like, oh, young man's, up for anything, making his name in TV. He was 45 years old when he did that. Like, he was a middle-aged man. His knees were going. And famously later, he complained that he had no insurance, although the BBC denies that. But the idea, it's like a sketch, isn't it? It's like there's literally nothing connecting him. He's just dangling off the ladder.
I mean, it's wild, but he's also managing to be quite funny at the same time.
Yeah.
And that delivery is... you were obviously influenced by the delivery.
Well, I never knowingly... I wouldn't want to give you the wrong idea that I saw that and thought, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
Not that I've ever done anything that matches that, but it was more the case that later on, when I got into TV, I'm jumping ahead of it. When I got into TV, I thought back to things that I'd seen growing up that were in some way struck me in some way as sort of remarkable. And it's that sense of TV that's sort of pushing it to the extreme, and also that what comes off from me there is a sense of authenticity and the feeling, because you're immediately thinking about where the cameras are and the fact that in the wide shots you're seeing the cameras. So it's, in addition to the sense of the danger, there's the sense that you're getting a glimpse into how television is made. And I think that increases the power of it, because you feel like this is completely real.
Yeah. So let's get back to you.
Yes.
And your start. How did you meet Michael Moore?
So I got out of university in 91, and I was a very directionless and sort of confused young man, and didn't have any clue as to what I wanted to do with my life. I went to America. I was lucky enough to have a US passport through my dad. I worked in journalism for a year or so, and then while working at a magazine called Spy, the magazine sadly folded. It went bankrupt, and a couple of friends started to work for Michael Moore, director of Roger and Me. He'd just been given his own TV show. The BBC were giving him a third of the money and had said to him, Michael, it would be great if you could hire a sort of a British correspondent. So my friends, who were all Americans, said to Michael, we know a British guy, and he's kind of weird. I don't know if they actually said that. I assume they did. I don't really know what they would have said. He's kind of funny, and he's clever, and he writes, and I don't know. You should check him out. He might be a good correspondent. So I sort of came in more or less under a you must have one British guy sort of quota. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was an affirmative action hire of a sort, which is
kind of boxes.
It's kind of sad in a way. And I think what he saw in me was a sort of sense that I was so raw. You know, I'd never been on TV before, and he was offering me a position on a network show. And I think what he saw was that there was something in my sort of lack of skills that would I don't know, work. I don't know what he was thinking.
Well, should we take a look at it, because it's really, really something. The side entrances.
Yes.
They have to come back. I watched that clip on repeat, and I was crying, laughing by the end of it. And what I love about it is it reminds me how funny you are, and how you started off a lot more funny than you are now, I guess, on TV. But why the sudden shift into such serious subjects?
Well, I think what happens, you know, that was in 1995, that clip. So I've been doing TV, 25 years now. And I think what happens is you just get older and you get interested in other things, or if I'm completely honest, what happened was there was a sort of growth that went on, and at a certain point there was a fork in the road, and I realized that we could keep making programs that were funny, but somehow sort of less impactful, and in my sense of things, less important, less gripping, less shocking. Or we could say, do you know what? Maybe it doesn't have to be funny, and we can still tell the story. And that felt like a kind of dangerous and a risky way of going ahead. But it was almost like there wasn't really a choice, because the alternative to me was so unappealing. So, for example. And it was little incremental steps. So when we did a story about a brothel, I remember my exec producer at the time saying, "Man, brothel, it's not that funny, is it?" And I said, well, I don't know. I think there might be humour in there if the contributors are cast in the right way. Anyway, we did it. That was in 2003, and it was funny in places. And then a few years went by, and we did one about a prison, San Quentin prison. And someone said, "Well, it's not funny, is it? It's a bit grim." Mm. And I think my friend even joked and said, "Oh yeah, that's the kind of program Panorama should be making, like taking the piss out of me, like you've got so dry and boring that you should be doing Panorama." Anyway, we did it, and 6 million people watched that one, the San Quentin one. It was the highest rated, and I think it's an amazing program. So, it's kind of funny in parts, but each time I made a show, and I worried less about it being funny, and then the show was still really good. I just thought, well, we can push further, until they got so grim that people stopped watching.
Do you think you could revisit the old days of side entries and gags?
One of the reasons why making my Scientology movie was fun was because it felt like it revisited some of that old flavour, and it had a bit of silliness in it, and participation, and UFOs, and kind of me shouting at ashtrays and goofing off. And even more recently, we did a show in the latest run of 3 called Altered States. It was about polyamory, where I got a bit silly. I didn't strip off completely, but I went to a sensual eating party.
Oh, yes, we saw.
And it was a lot of... And that was, again, fun, because it felt like a bit of a... So, yeah, I think I've still got the skills to do a side
Still got
entry.
it in you. So how do you decide...
that was speeded up. Yeah. When I did that was an effect. I can't actually move to the side.
You could experiment more. You could start down and just pop up.
Yeah, the knees would go, though, I think.
Yeah, or maybe they could just drop you into shot.
I'm up for anything.
Up for anything these days. I've lost my train of thought there, imagining you with broken knees.